Come to Daily Red Devil for all of your latest Manchester United transfer news and talk. Happy Monday. I hope you all had a great weekend. We're back with another massive show to bring you guys today. But before we jump into that, please do me one small favour. Smash a like on today's video. Subscribe to the channel if you are new. And let's get straight on into it. On the show this morning, we are obviously going to be discussing Manchester United's 2-1 victory over Brentford on Saturday. Also talking a little bit about the game against Fenerbahce on Thursday, and also looking to the next transfer window where apparently Manchester United are targeting a player who is being described as the next NGolo Kante. So we'll be talking about all of those things. As always, get in the comment section. Let me know your thoughts on everything we discuss on today's show. And I want to start the show off with a question to get a bit of interaction going. And the question's going to be about, there's a two-part question. So the first part of the question is, how impressed were you with Manchester United on Saturday? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section. And two, this is the really difficult question to answer. And I think this will be the make or break for Erik ten Hag. But I'm going to ask you it anyway. Do you think Erik ten Hag can get these Manchester United players to play like they did in that second half against Brentford every single game? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. It's a little bit of a long-winded question, but there's a lot of, a lot that you can get into there. So, write a long paragraph, write whatever you want. I always read through all the comments. So, go and get involved in that right now. But I'm going to answer those two questions first before we get on with the rest of the show. So the first question was this. Am I impressed with the performance on Saturday? First half, not really. The first half I thought was pretty 50-50. I don't think either team deserved to be winning at half-time. Brentford were very lucky in their goal in the sense that if Matthias de Ligt was on the pitch, which he should have been, that goal wouldn't have gone in, I don't think, because he would have been the man marking that player. But in the second half, I was incredibly impressed. I would even say that the first 20, 30 minutes of the second half was arguably the best football I've seen under Erik ten Hag. It was really good. Really, really good. Against a decent Brentford side. And I know people will say, oh, it's only Brentford. What does that even mean? Brentford are a good side. They've got a manager who's been there for like 10 years, I think. Thomas Frank. He's been at Brentford for about 10 years. He's got every player he wants. They play a certain system. Brentford are a good side. It's not like they're like in the Conference League or something. They're a good team. I was impressed. But the biggest thing for me is, can Erik ten Hag get these players to play like that every single game? That's the challenge. That's what he's got to try and do. He's got to motivate them so they go out and play games every week like that. It's not only because they got a dodgy goal conceded against them in the last minute of the first half. That was arguably why they played like that in the second half, wasn't it? Because in that first half, you could tell the players were frustrated. They felt like the referee sending de Ligt off the pitch because of his blood on his head and all the rest of it meant that they were unfairly treated. And then they came out with a point to prove. But Erik ten Hag's got to drill that into them. I don't know how he does that, to be honest. I mean, it's going to be pretty hard, but he's got to drill that into them. He's got to drill that into these players that they need to go out there and perform like they did in that second half every single game, starting with Fenerbahce on Thursday. That's a must-win game for Manchester United. Even just from an overall bigger picture, it's Erik ten Hag versus Jose Mourinho. Jose Mourinho, obviously ex-Manchester United manager. We need to go and beat Fenerbahce on Thursday night. And let's be honest here, Fenerbahce are a decent side with decent players. It's not going to be easy. Going to Turkey is never an easy fixture. I personally would... I know people are going to criticise me for this, but I personally would take a draw against Fenerbahce away from home. I don't think it would be a bad result, considering how the Europa League group situation has changed. It's not the same as it used to be. So how it works now, the top 8 sides qualify automatically to the next round. And then the next 20 teams, pretty much, they all then go into a qualifying round. So at the moment, Man United are sat 21st in the Europa League, which sounds terrible, but we would actually still progress to the next round at this point. We would obviously then have to play like a playoff round. I mean, you'd prefer not to have to do that. Fenerbahce are... Where are Fenerbahce? I can't even see Fenerbahce. Where are they? Fenerbahce are 13th. They won the first game and they drew the second game. So they're unbeaten so far. Man United are also unbeaten, remember. We drew both games. But I think, once we've got this Fenerbahce game out of the way, the rest of the fixtures coming up somewhat easier, I would say. So the next fixtures after that, so we've got Fenerbahce on Thursday, then we play PAOK. PAOK? Is that how you say it? I don't know. Greek side anyway. We play them in November. Then we play Bodo/Glimt at home. So we've got 2 relatively easy home fixtures coming up. And then we play Victoria Plizen. Then we've got Rangers at home. So I think, if we can get out of this Fenerbahce game without losing, and then we go on a bit of a run in the rest of the games, I think we will comfortably finish in the top 8 positions, which would mean that we would qualify without having to go through to the next round. So I personally would take a draw. Obviously, I would love for us to win. We can't lose against Fenerbahce, that's for sure. Like, we have to at least draw. But, when you look at their team, they have got some decent players. They're not an easy side to beat. They've got some pretty big name players. They've got a big name manager. Obviously, the atmosphere in Turkey is going to be very hostile towards Manchester United. It's not going to be an easy place to go. They've got Amrabat, they've got St. Maximin, they've got Fred. There's lots of other people as well. Tadic. So, some of Dzeko. Some of them obviously a little bit past their best, but they have still got some very good players there. But yeah, it'd be interesting to see how that one goes. Let's see what people are saying in the comment section this morning. Al says, is it true that we've only won 2 games out of 10 in Europe? Yeah, I think that is true, mate, unfortunately. Yeah, it's not a particularly nice stat to start the day with, is it? But I think you are right, yeah. Ellen says, Erik ten Hag will build a winning team if he gets the time, and if he doesn't get the time he needs, then we will have to give the right manager the time. I mean, I somewhat agree with you. I do. But at the same time, how much time is time, Because I think it's a little bit of a cheat question, that, or a bit of a cheat statement, because, if you gave Erik ten Hag 100 years, I'm sure, he would probably be dead by then, but you get the point. If you gave him 20 years of failure, I'm sure at some point he would succeed, It's just how much time. That's more the question that we should be discussing. Like, I would say, if I'm looking at it from an outside picture, based on what other teams in the Premier League are doing, like Arsenal, etc., I would say progress would be winning a trophy every year, which we've done so far, and then be challenging by like the 4th or 5th year. That's realistic to me. We're going into the 3rd year now. We're in the 3rd year. So it would be like challenging, maybe not next season, the season after. That would be like my expectation from the beginning, Because there's some people, I hear like TalkSport, the mainstream media, and they talk about Manchester United, and they seem to think that Man United should be challenging at the moment, and that if they sack Erik ten Hag, will immediately be challenging. And I'm sat there thinking, we haven't challenged in 11 years. We finished 2nd once, and that was under Ollie, but we finished 20 points behind Manchester City. But then there's this assumption that we have this divine right to challenge. But why? Based on what? I don't understand it. We haven't challenged under Van Gaal. We didn't challenge under Moyes. We didn't challenge under Ollie. We didn't challenge under Ralph Rangnick. We haven't challenged under any manager in the last decade. So, me personally, I think if he can drill this into them for every single game, like we were in that second half, I think we could easily be a top 4 side, easily, and probably then challenge in the next kind of couple of years. But it's just the consistency. That's always been the problem with Manchester United. And we've always got to go, to me, it feels like Manchester United have to go a goal behind before they really get into first gear. They start games slow. We sometimes concede early. But yesterday, in that second half, on Saturday, in that second half, amazing. Tari says the players' attitude is the problem. They play well when they want to. I would agree with that, to be fair. I think the players on Saturday were motivated because they felt like they'd been wronged because of that whole De Ligt having to go off the pitch and then Brentford scoring that header, which they wouldn't have scored because De Ligt would have been marking that player and he would have got the ball, I imagine. I mean, I'm assuming here, but we would have had a much better chance of defending that corner if our biggest, strongest, tallest centre-back was on the pitch. That's just a fact, isn't it? It's a mathematical fact. If you lose a player, your chances of not conceding a goal decrease, don't they? Especially if it's one of your defenders. But yeah, I do agree that these players are very reaction. They're reaction-based players. If they feel like something's gone against them, they'll perform. So yeah, I don't know how we get around that. Like there isn't really a way. I don't think it's just how we're, I don't know, because it's been the same under every manager. So you can't just say, oh, it's Erik ten Hag's fault. I think, you know what? I think, looking at it from a bigger picture, it probably is the whole club as a whole. Like Man City don't seem to have these problems, and it must just be the environment that they've created at that club from the top to bottom, that players know when they come in what's expected of them and that they have to perform 150% every single week. Over the last decade, there must have just been, because of how the Glazers have effectively let the club turn to shit, to be blunt with you, the players must just, I don't think not care is the right word. I just think the standards have dropped so high, whereas if you go to Man City, you know what's expected of you, and you know that if you don't perform, you'll be out of the team and that'll be it. Whereas at Man United, like, we don't do that. If a player doesn't perform, they still get picked next week. Whereas at Man City, Pep Guardiola has the authority to say, all right, I don't know, Jack Grealish, we just spent 100 million on you. You're not good enough. You're sitting on the bench for the next 2 months, or whoever. That was just an example. Whereas at Man United, I just don't feel like we have the ability to do that. I don't know why, but yeah. But anyway, going back to the game on Saturday, very, very happy, obviously, with the win. But the thing here is we've got to build on this. Winning one game isn't... I mean, it's great at the moment, brilliant, but... like, we need to work our way up that table, and obviously we've got to beat West Ham on the weekend now. Like, West Ham are in a pretty bad position at the moment, having lost 4-1 to Tottenham on the weekend. Like, we've got to beat West Ham. If we were to beat West Ham on the weekend, we could be edging up the table quite quickly then, We're only 6 points off top 4. It's not that much. If one of those teams draw on the weekend and we win, we'd only be 4 points off. So it's not that much of a gap, if you actually think about it. It's a reasonable amount to catch up on. But yeah, let's see what people are saying in the chat this morning. Yeah, people are asking about the new NGolo Kante. So let's talk about that, shall we? Where is that story that I wanted to bring you? Yeah, here we go. So this is coming out from the Manchester Evening News this morning. There are some other journalists as well reporting this same story that apparently Manchester United are looking to sign Girona star Martin. Where's he go? Where's he gone? There he is. Martin Friendrup. Probably said his name wrong. Martin Friendrup. So apparently this player is being described as the next NGolo Kante. Danish. He moved from Brøndby in 2022 for a fee of around 3.5 million euros. And apparently Manchester United see him as the missing piece to their midfield problems. You know what? I would probably still say that the midfield is a problem for Manchester United when you actually think about it. Like, Christian Eriksen is, 33? And he's leaving at the end of the season. His contract's expired, or is expiring. Casemiro, I think he's got 2 years left and did very well against Brentford, to be fair, but he's not a player for the future, is he? Because he's years away from probably retiring or moving to Saudi. And then your only midfield options then are going to be Mainu and Ugarte and maybe Toby Collier. Whatever people think of Casemiro and Eriksen, within the next 2 years, both of those players will be gone. 100%. Eriksen contract expires this summer and Casemiro's contract expires in 2 years. Both of those players, 2 years from now, will not be Manchester United players. And if you look at our midfield at the moment, there's already question marks around it. But what happens when those two have gone? Maybe it's the right thing. Maybe they do need to leave. But regardless of that, the fact of the matter is they are getting old. Their contracts are expiring and they are going to go. So whether you think they should stay or not, and you look at the rest of our midfield, right? We literally only have Manuel Ugarte, Toby Collier and Kobe Mainu, and that's it. I know you've got Mason Mount and Bruno, but they're more attacking midfielders, aren't they? We're talking about the more defensive-minded midfielders. So you can see why Manchester United is still eyeing up alternatives. And I watched a couple of videos. I read some information about this Martin Friendrup, 23 years of age, Danish international. He can play as a defensive midfielder and he can play as a fullback as well, which is quite interesting. So he's quite versatile. His primary position is central midfield, but he can play in a more defensive position as well. I think he looks like an interesting option. I think signing players, who haven't quite yet made it to the big time is probably the direction that Man United want to be going. Not going for like, I don't know, a Frankie de Jong or someone of that caliber who's going to cost you 80 million and 500 grand a week in wages. Like, we need to bring in players like this who want to prove something and have a point to prove, opposed to bringing in big name players who come for the paycheck. But yeah, it'd be interesting to see. 23 years of age. Let's see what else people are saying in the chat this morning. Al says, why did we buy Mason Mount? I mean, that's a very, very fair point. Mason Mount was probably one of the weirdest signings, I think, in the last decade. I'm not trying to be horrible here, but thinking about it now, Mason Mount and Anthony were probably the two worst signings we've made in the last decade, weren't they? Like, awful signings. Absolutely terrible. At least with Anthony, there was some excitement when we signed him. People were like, oh, he could be a good player. Whereas with Mason Mount, everyone was just like, why the hell did we buy Mason Mount? He's just injured all the time. To be honest, for me personally, he's an example of a player that Manchester United signed that just confuses me. I don't get it. Like, is he ever going to be able to play? Like, what's his injury now? Like, he had a tiny injury to his head a month ago, and he hasn't played football since. Let's have a look. I mean, it doesn't even say that he is injured if you look on Transfer Market at the moment. Like, what is wrong with him? Mason Mount injury. Yeah, I mean, it says that he's had a head injury. And that was on the 30th of September, 3 weeks ago. I just don't understand how you can be out for that long when De Ligt was literally like gushing with blood all over his head, got a kneed in the head at full sprint, which would hurt so much, right? And he then played the rest of the football match. Like, I just don't get it. It doesn't make any sense. Doesn't make any sense. Fred says, what's your view on Xerxes being loaned out to Juventus? I've not heard anything about that. That doesn't sound believable to me. Xerxes to Juventus. Let's have a look. This story's from 3 weeks ago. Juventus linked with shock January move for struggling Manchester United striker. I don't see why Manchester United would loan Xerxes to Juventus. That doesn't make any sense whatsoever, to be honest. Like, what would be the benefit of that? Yeah, I don't know. I don't even know how to react to that. I'll be honest with you, mate. I think the likelihood of Man United loaning out Xerxes is probably very small. 1%, 2%. Like, Rasmus Højlund is injured quite a lot and can't play 90 minutes. Like, we need Xerxes. Yeah, I don't know. Strange. It's probably just media. It's probably just media nonsense trying to put pressure on Xerxes, to be honest. You know, saying, oh, he's struggling. Oh, he needs to get out of Manchester United. He needs an escape route. It's that kind of narrative, isn't it? So, yeah. Somebody's saying, what do you think will happen to Manuel Ugarte? The thing is, right, there's all this like mass hysteria where everyone's like, oh, Ugarte, why is he not playing? Why is he not playing? Think about this logically, okay? Bruno Fernandes is suspended for the game against Fenerbahce on Thursday, which means that Eriksen will play in Bruno Fernandes' place, okay? Because Bruno Fernandes can't play. Kobe Mainoo is injured, so he's not going to play against Fenerbahce, which means that the only midfielders available to play against Fenerbahce will be Casemiro and Ugarte. So most likely the midfield against Fenerbahce will be Ugarte, Casemiro, and Bruno Fernandes. And Christian Eriksen, because Bruno Fernandes is suspended because he got a red card. Now, people are like, why did Manuel Ugarte not play on Saturday? Manuel Ugarte was playing for Uruguay in South America, only got back to Manchester on Thursday. And he also picked up an injury when he was playing for Uruguay a couple of days before. It was only a light injury, just a knock, but he did have an injury. So he finished the game for Uruguay, flew straight back to Manchester, got in Thursday, didn't train until Friday, and apparently he didn't actually train. It was just like a rehabilitation session, so he probably just went in like an ice bath, had a massage, whatever. So he wasn't actually in first team training. That's why he didn't play. And I think there's this sensationalism that's going around with some people where they're like, it's a disgrace. Why is Ugarte not playing? If you just kind of take away the sensationalism, right, and just actually look at the situation and imagine you are Ten Hag, or imagine you are the fitness department, or imagine you are Manuel Ugarte, okay? You come back to Manchester on Thursday after travelling probably 10 plus hours on a plane and you've had an injury. The next day, on the Friday, you have a day of massages, a day of ice baths to try and prevent your injury from getting worse. And then on Saturday, there's a game. Like, of course he's not going to start. It doesn't make any sense. Why would he start? Remember, Casemiro doesn't play for Brazil anymore. So Casemiro would have just been chilling in Manchester for the last 2 weeks, training, keeping himself fit. Like, that's why. And I don't disagree with that. I think it makes a lot of sense. But the point I'm making here is I can understand why he didn't play on Saturday. But on Thursday, we will see Manuel Ugarte. We will. So that's the reason why. And people just seem to kind of move past that and just go, straight to the, it's a disgrace that he's not playing and all the rest of it. But that's the reason why he didn't play. There's an actual reason behind it. Tarup says, what do you think the starting 11 will be for Fenerbahce? I reckon it'll be Onana in goal. It'll be... I quite liked Martinez at left back, I'm not going to lie. If Mazraoui's still not 100% fit, I would do Martinez at left back. I would do Johnny Evans and De Ligt as the centre back, and I'd do Dalot at right back. That's what I would like. And then midfield, I'm going to go with Manuel Ugarte, Casemiro, and Eriksen. And then front three, I'm going to go with Rashford. I thought he had a good game against Brentford. I'm going to go with Højlund, and I'm going to go with Garnacho. That would be my starting 11 for the game against Fenerbahce. I would be very surprised if that's not the starting 11, because obviously you've got to remember Maguire's injured, Kobe Mainoo's injured, Mazraoui's still a bit of a question mark. I know he came on for a few minutes at the end against Brentford, but he is apparently still not 100%. So I imagine that will probably be the lineup for the game against Fenerbahce. And that's what I would go with personally. I think Martinez at left back brought quite a lot of composure, patience, control. I thought he was really, really good. And obviously how Manchester United play at the moment, the left back and the right back, whilst we're in possession, usually invert into the midfield. And I think Martinez in the midfield is great because he's amazing on the ball. So yeah, that's what I would go with. Onana, Martinez, De Ligt, Evans, Dalot, Ugarte, Casemiro, Rashford, Eriksen, Garnacho, and Højlund. That's what I'm doing. But you can let me know yours in the comment section. What's your predicted starting 11? Obviously, remember Bruno's suspended, Maguire's injured, Mainoo's injured, Mount's injured. There's quite a few players injured, remember. So yeah, that's what I would go with. But I'm going to wrap the video up here, guys. Thank you very much for joining me on the show this morning. I hope you have enjoyed it. Please make sure to drop a like before you leave. Subscribe to the channel if you are new. This has been Daily Red Devil. Have a great day, everybody, and I'll speak to you all very, very soon. Bye for now.